to the Berkeley Media Bias Review, an analysis of bias present in modern media. I am Ryan Mills.
And I'm Jeff Weber. And today we are examining media bias dealing with the Iranian nuclear program. We will hear from several analysts who have examined the International Herald Tribune, CNN, and Al Jazeera.
First, we will hear from Jeff, who has reviewed the bias of CNN, especially in the scope of examining the bias of nationalism.
After myself, we will hear from my co-host Ryan, who has analyzed the Middle East's Al Jazeera and examined the role of political bias in their journalism.
And lastly, Derek will give us his insight into bias within the International Herald Tribune.
Thanks for joining us, and enjoy another episode of the Berkeley Media Bias Review. In the 5 articles investigated from CNN regarding the Iranian nuclear program, there's a notable trend for national bias within most of these articles. In CNN's coverage of President Obama's speech delivered to the UN, there is national bias inherently within the video. The most notable example of this is when Obama states that the door to diplomacy is still open to Iran, provided that they just walk through it. Now, this statement turns Americans naturally against Iranians, depicting their government to be hesitant about making deals with other countries, even if it is beneficial for them. Now, while this may or may not be true, the video doesn't touch upon the Iranian side of the argument at all, leaving one to wonder if the argument is really fair. In another article on the same issue, the same types of nationalism are present. The pattern in these articles is that CNN, being an American news source, generally tends to focus their attention on steering American opinions against the Iranians, usually portraying them to be indecisive within their government. Now, none of these articles present the Iranian side of the argument at all, and really leaves people wondering if their argument is fair at all for them. And because of this, these articles very much lose their journalistic quality, and it would be very unfair to the Iranians to form an opinion against their government based upon just these articles.
Thank you, Jeff. Now I will be discussing the political bias in Al Jazeera's journalism. In an Al Jazeera article from March titled, "Russia Opened to Iran Sanctions," the author shows clear political bias for the United States as well as several other countries' policy towards Iran. This policy includes Iran ceasing all uranium enrichment activities as well as imposing new penalties against Iran for their lack of cooperation. The author shows his bias by citing several sources who are for the policy, but very few who are against. Furthermore, the author cites Dmitry Medvedev, the president of Russia and a former supporter of Iran, as saying, "We believe that it's not over yet, that we can still reach an agreement. Nonetheless, if it doesn't work out, Russia is ready to consider with our other partners the question of introducing sanctions." By using a source that would generally oppose the sanction, the author strengthens the support for the new policy and thus clearly shows his political bias for the United States policy. Now, I'll hand it over to Derek, who will explain his stance on the bias shown by the International Herald Tribune. Derek?
Today, I'm here to speak to you about the International Herald Tribune's propensity for sensationalism. In particular, David E. Sainer and Mark Mazzetti have succumbed to this journalistic fault. In their article, U.S. assures Israel that Iran threat is not imminent, the authors make several assertions that turn an otherwise understated article into an alarmist piece. Among these assertions are the precise timeline that the authors establish, which the authors even admit is based on speculation and estimation. Additionally, the authors assert that if further action is taken by Iran, then military action involving Israel and possibly the United States could occur. This alarmist statement, along with the previous speculations, turned this ordinary article into a premium example of sensationalism. This bias pollutes the article and distorts the truth of the matter, making the article almost invalid.
Thank you, Derek, for that report.
Yes, and from these provided examples, the bias in modern media has become very blatant. The key differences in these bias are not who they are biased to, but rather the manner in which they are biased.
For example, sensationalism occurs from several rhetorical fallacies that result in an over-exaggeration, while political and national biases are born from the overemphasis of a certain viewpoint, as seen in CNN and Al Jazeera. But all of these biases ultimately detract from the journalistic quality of the story.
And yes, from what we were able to gather today from Derek, Ryan, and myself, the Iranian nuclear program is a unique story that has caused several different types of bias from several different sources.
Thank you all again for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you next time on the Berkeley Media Bias Review.